I think we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you all so much for joining us today. I know it's a really unusual and unsettling time for so many. I hope you're doing well, staying physically and mentally strong. I'm Karen Nussel, and I'm proud to be newly elected president of the Generation Hope Board of Directors. And we are doing this event today really to just get our family together. I know I've been doing a lot of family Zoom calls, and I know many of you have been too. And this was sort of our chance to get our family together and update you on really exciting things going on, update you on how we are managing through COVID and how our scholars are doing. I know fellow board members and I have been just blown away by the Generation Hope team's response to COVID. And been honored to play a role in that response. And we also have just been so inspired by the resilience and determination and spirit of our impressive scholars and their kiddos. So we're just so proud of how they've been navigating this. And we continue to be grateful for this community of all of you on this call who care about Generation Hope and support our mission in so many ways. It really makes a difference, especially during times like this. It's important to note too that while it's been a little overshadowed by COVID-19, this year does mark Generation Hope's 10-year anniversary, and we've been trying to celebrate that. It's really exciting for us. So we wanted to take a moment and name that today and celebrate that here as well. During this conversation today, you're going to hear from our founder and CEO, Nicole Lynn Lewis, our mental health coordinator, Asia Viana Leek, and one of our amazing Hope coaches, Naya Patterson. And before I welcome Nicole to kick us off here, I'm really excited to share some amazing news that Nicole was just chosen as one of the inaugural honorees of Black Voices for Black Justice and receiving a grant from their fund in the inaugural class of awardees. And we're going to share that link in the chat in case you want to check that out. But it's an incredible honor. And we're so proud of her and so proud of the organization for getting that recognition. And this comes right after she was being selected as a woman who means business by the Washington Business Journal. So we've had a lot of really exciting exposure and honor and really deserved, public acknowledgement of Nicole's work and the work of the organization. So we wanted to let you guys know those exciting things at the outset. We're going to have plenty of time for questions at the end. So as we go along, feel free to drop questions in the chat. And again, just thank you for joining us. And now I'll kick it over to Nicole.
Thank you so much, Karen, and thank you for the shout outs. Really thankful for the wonderful exposure that we've been able to garner for Generation Hope through these awards and recognitions over the past several weeks. And I always say that these honors are about the entire Generation Hope team. As you will see today, we have some amazing colleagues that I get to do this work with each and every day. So really thankful for the recognition for all of our efforts to serve young families. So we truly appreciate you and the rest of the board, Karen, for your unwavering support in that work. And I really want to echo what Karen said about how grateful we are for all of you making time to be with us today. We know, as Karen said, that it is a really difficult time for all of us, and having a strong community of support makes so much of a difference in times like these. So thank you. I'm going to share a bit about the impacts of COVID-19 on Generation Hope and our families, what we're doing to ensure they make it through this pandemic, and what we've been learning over the past several months. As you all know, Generation Hope is a two-generation solution to poverty. We're helping teen parents earn their college degrees through our scholar program, and we're helping the children of those teen parents prepare for kindergarten through our Next Generation Academy. So right now, we're really seeing and navigating the impacts of the pandemic for both parent and child. What does that look like? About 25% of our scholars have lost work, and many of their family members have also lost work, creating real financial crises for our families. Another 15% or so have had to report to jobs as essential workers despite childcare challenges, which we know are pervasive right now. Our scholars are juggling technology, physical space, and schedules as they try to take college courses while also supporting their children's virtual schooling. Many of you have heard the digital divide conversation that's happening. We're seeing that in real time for sure with our families. For too many of our students, these are not new challenges. Really the pandemic has just exacerbated crises that already existed, things like food insecurity, housing instability, domestic violence, poverty, and more. I've been really thankful for many things in this crisis. And one of those is that Generation Hope has had these wraparound supports really built into our programming for the entire family for a long time. I often get the question of, as you guys respond to COVID-19, what are the new things that you're doing that you didn't have to do before for your families? And really, Generation Hope was already doing holistic wraparound supports for our families coming into the pandemic. That's really at the core of who we are. And so it's really been about increasing those holistic supports that already existed, doing more of that to help our families through COVID-19 and stay on track towards their long-term goals. So what are some of the ways that we've done this? Our Hope coaches are amazing, and they provide case management ongoing. That means they're connecting with scholars consistently helping them prepare for and navigate any challenges that come up. Our mentors, who are also incredible, are still meeting with scholars virtually, providing those meaningful connections, the emotional support that we know is so important, particularly now for our students. We're also still providing career readiness support, which is all the more important right now because we know how uncertain the job market is. So it's really important that we stay focused on career counseling for our students, supporting them with virtual internships. And next month, or actually this month, we'll be doing a career readiness week, a full week of panels, resume reviews, and mock interviews. We're also still hosting a range of virtual workshops and trainings, including our family dinners for our early childhood program, Next Generation Academy. And we've also created community even in the virtual space. Those of you who have been a part of the Generation Hope family for some time know how important it is for us to feel connected. And we often greet each other with hugs. These are things we can't do as we're social distancing. So early on, we wanted to really make sure we were still building those connections and community, even in this virtual space. So some of the things that we've been doing are sending our scholars care packages, doing weekly bedtime stories for our kiddos and our families on Facebook Live. Hopefully you guys have been able to tune into some of those. We're having one tonight at 7:30, so join us for that. We are also so proud that despite declines in college enrollment nationally, 93% of our scholars finished all their classes last semester, and we were still able to welcome a new class of scholars in July. So this is really, I often say, proof is in the pudding. I think we're seeing the fact that we were able to keep our scholars enrolled in school over the spring semester, which is probably one of the toughest semesters they've ever had to deal with, is really a testament to the fact that these holistic supports are important and they're really vital for parenting college students right now. Before I introduce my wonderful colleagues, I do also want to take a moment to acknowledge Generation Hope's commitment to race equity. This summer, our nation has mourned the killings of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and too many other Black lives, and it has brought about a racial reckoning where people from so many backgrounds have been asking how they can address systemic racism. We too have been responding in new ways. For example, we held community conversations with our scholars to create space for them to share how they're feeling right now, and also for our mentors to help them think through how they can support their scholars at this time. But really, race equity has been woven into the fabric of our work since our beginning. The core of our work is about ensuring that families, primarily families of color, can thrive. And the proof of this is that is in the diversity of our board and our staff. But we really also believe that we need to dig deeper than that. It's more than just representation. Over the last year, we've worked with a group called ProInspire to assess key areas of our organization, our board, staff, data, HR, and more, about the quality of their race equity. And we're also designing concrete actions we can take to continue to enhance our race equity in all of those areas. We've also convened a racial equity working group that meets regularly to move these steps forward. And at the end of this conversation today, I'll also share a bit about new work we're launching to address the systemic barriers that face student parents and their children. knowing that so many of those challenges are rooted in racism. I look forward to continuing to keep you updated on that, and always welcome the opportunity to learn from all of you and share our resources with you as well. We really consider this work community work, and we're in this all together. So now I would like to introduce Asia, who is one of those amazing colleagues I mentioned before. She is our mental health coordinator. Asia is a licensed counselor as well as a yoga teacher and a dance and movement therapist. She joined us last year as a part of our effort to bring mental health supports in-house for our families. And the COVID-19 crisis has made us even more grateful to have her on board. Before I turn it over to her, just a reminder, you can drop questions in the chat at any point, and we'll have a section towards the end where we'll be sharing those questions and having Q&A, and we look forward to answering them then. Asia, I'll turn it over to you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Asia, and as Nicole said, I'm the mental health coordinator at Generation Hope. And I just want to share an overview of some of the things that our scholars and their children have been experiencing as part of the mental health challenges due to the impact of COVID-19. And there's been a variety of stressors for sure, but one of the greatest challenges has been the dual anxiety around dealing with the pandemic and that not being something that we've experienced, while also just dealing with the other anxieties and feelings that were already present and maybe that they were already seeking mental health counseling for. And so this double anxiety has really been a big theme, because in a way the anxiety around the pandemic is natural and is normal, and how to sit with that while also trying to do the work to not let that anxiety run your life and take you away from the things that you are able to control or are able to enjoy. So that's definitely been one of the big challenges that we've seen with the scholars. And in addition to that, there have been some heightened family tensions, staying at home, being quarantined, in a way, some of the isolation that comes from not having your normal social engagement has been something that we've had to work with regarding the mental health of the scholars, as well as I think it's important to note that a great number of our scholars do live in multi-generational homes, which can add a bit more tension or conflict in certain ways, especially as we've not only existed within the pandemic, but within the social unrest that has happened, and everybody just trying to make sense of where our world is during this time. And during the sessions, there's been a heavy emphasis that I've placed on using coping skills. So what that looks like could be different from scholar to scholar, from family to family, but really focusing on mindfulness within those coping skills, as well as this idea of functional self-care. So we talk about self-care a lot. You hear that word, and what comes to mind to me is like, oh, going to a spa or going on a luxurious vacation. But really, this functional self-care is so important, and asking yourself, what is it that you need in the moment? How can I take care of myself right now? Did I eat breakfast when I fed breakfast to my children? Did I take a shower when I gave my child a bath? And so really trying to heighten the importance of both the functional self-care as well as this practice of mindfulness. And when it comes to the work with the scholars' children, feeling expression has definitely been a big focus. Feeling expression is typically something that other mental health researchers have found has not happened as much in families of color. And so wanting to do the work to normalize that and make that a habit within our scholars' families in order to give kids the space to express what's happening right now. And I think that work, I think, not only has translated to the children, but also the scholars as well. And outside of the individual sessions, we've also offered a support session to scholars surrounding the changes from that were coming this fall. So this took place in August, and we really focused on this idea of virtual schooling, which was just a high pressure situation for a lot of scholars. You know, this idea of being a homeschool teacher as well as being a student and maybe even working is just a lot. And so we provided a support session around how to deal with some of those changes. And the two big things that came out of that was taking the perspective of being flexible and also approaching this in a creative way. There's no right or wrong. There is no blueprint to how to navigate this virtual schooling situation. And we also, I know Nicole mentioned our family dinners, but there were at two of the family dinners, one in May and one in September, the psychoeducation session that I led was around anxiety and dealing with the anxiety in the way that's, again, not allowing it to take over your life. And so overall, there's been both the effort through the individual sessions and these group opportunities to engage with the scholars. And we've seen an increase in the mental health sessions by about 30% since April of 2020. And when we look at the hours of direct service, which in counseling is the individual and the group time face-to-face, from January 1st to March 15th, there were about, I did about 68 and a half hours. So that's over about 2.5 months. But when we look at the 6-month period post COVID-19 beginning here, or at least our stay-at-home orders beginning from March 16th to September 13th, I did about 202 direct hours. So definitely seeing an increase in the connections with the scholars regarding their mental health.
Thank you so much, Asia. And just want to really highlight the 30% increase, which is so significant, you know, just in terms of thinking about what families are going through right now. And we are so thankful for Asia and her support, and to our scholars and to our team, and just reminding all of us to ask those really important questions. What do I need right now in this moment? So we're so thankful for Asia on our team. I'm happy to introduce now Naya, who is one of our incredible Hope coaches. Naya works directly with our scholars and our children in Next Generation Academy, and she runs a variety of programming for our families in that program. She's going to share a bit more about what she is working on these days.
Thank you, Nicole. Good morning, everyone. So as Nicole mentioned, I'm going to talk a little bit about our Next Gen programming and what's been going on, especially since COVID. So Next Generation Academy, which I may refer to as Next Gen, does allow us to serve both our children and scholars together with the goal of getting our scholars' children kindergarten ready simultaneously while our scholars are working towards their degree. And so we serve scholars in the Next Generation Academy program who have children from the ages of 8 months to 3 years up until they turn 5 and go to kindergarten. And so the major piece of our Next Generation Academy program is our home visiting coupled with case management. And so our home visiting allows us to really address the individual needs of scholars and children and provide that case management with them one-on-one as well. And so for our home visiting, we do use the Parents as Teachers curriculum, which is a national home visiting curriculum. It is evidence-based curriculum that really allows us to increase parent knowledge of early childhood development and improve parent practices. It allows us to provide early detection of possible developmental delays or health issues, as well as prevent child abuse and neglect, and increase children's school readiness and school success. And so since COVID, we've been really lucky and grateful to continue doing our home visits just virtually. And so it's really allowed us, I would say, to connect with our scholars even more in a sense. When I'm meeting with my scholars for our home visits now, I'm feeling like there's no rush on either end. You know, scholars aren't just kind of rushing into the home from their day, but there's more time to just sit and to be and to really connect with each other and dig deep into what's going on in their lives. And so that's really been a great piece of now doing the home visits virtually for the time being. I would also say that for my scholars, I've really seen them take a bigger role in taking the lead in the parent and child activity that we do at each home visit. And I really think that this has garnered and increased their parenting confidence and strength, which is a really great outcome for us to have from this situation. Our home visit activities that have been really hands-on and independent have been really successful during this time as well, and have really just allowed our scholars, again, to be engaged and take the lead in these activities with their kiddos. So some of our favorites have been ones like making Play-Doh. It's really hands-on, allows the kids to really work on their fine motor skills, and who doesn't like to play and mix ingredients in the kitchen. And we've also done a lot of freeze dance. There's another activity called counting crazy coins. So a lot of those ones that are still allowing movement and engagement have really been helpful and fun during this time. Another big piece of our Next Generation Academy program is our Parent Connect groups, which we do in the form of a family dinner. And so generally those would be in person, but we've been lucky enough to continue to do those virtually as well. And so at those family dinners, we really focus on having the scholars and the kiddos come together and having some kind of discussion on a developmental topic, a parenting topic, and really just kind of create that community and space for scholars to connect with each other and touch base about, you know, what's going on in their kiddos' lives, what their experiences have been, and an opportunity to support each other and learn from one another as well. And so we've been really intentional about getting feedback from our scholars about our family dinners and how it's going for them virtually, making sure that we are still bringing the best value and content and information, even though it's happening virtually and they are spending a lot of virtual time, you know, in their classes and for other things at this time. We're just really intentional about making sure that the value is still there and they're still able to have that great connection, although it is virtual. Many scholars did know from a number of our surveys garnering their feedback that they really do still enjoy the family dinners, although they are virtual at this time. In addition to that, our Next Generation Academy program includes literacy and social emotional interventions. So we do pre and post evaluations for the kiddos at the beginning and the end of each program year, just to see again where their progress is in their development and if there are any concerns that we can address and refer them to appropriate professionals if necessary. We do have the mental health support that Asia helps provide that also includes children. And then lastly, our resource families is another great piece of our Next Generation Academy program. And so our resource families are a group of 2 or more volunteers from the community. They may be in the same family, they may be colleagues or friends who are volunteering together to provide resources and connections to our scholar families to practically almost anything that they need by opening our scholar family networks and putting them in touch with the resources and the people right here in our community that can help them, you know, get to the next space that they need. So during COVID, we've been really grateful to match almost all of our Next Gen scholars now with resource families. And that's just been because of the amazing support and the continued support we've been getting from the community and individuals really just wanting to continue to see where they can fit in and help out, even though things have moved virtually. So this has really just been a great experience to continue working with our scholars so virtually and still feeling so connected and providing them with the supports that they need.
Thank you so much, Naya. I mentioned in the beginning that Generation Hope really came into this pandemic in a fortunate place because we did already have such amazing and robust wraparound services. And I think the mental health supports that Asia has detailed for us, as well as our early childhood programming that Naya has just given us a wonderful overview on, are examples of those robust wraparound services and how they've been able, they really allowed us to keep families connected and supported throughout the pandemic. So you've gotten a sneak peek at the amazing team we have here at Generation Hope that I get to work with every day. Before we open it up for questions, I do want to just take a moment to talk about what's next for us. While this is a really crazy and challenging year, I also think it might be one of the most exciting years for Generation Hope ever. I mentioned earlier, we're launching new work to address the systemic barriers that are facing student parents across the country. And this work is really going to allow us to broaden our impact. It'll include sharing the expertise that we've developed over our 10 years with colleges and universities across the country. We're going to be providing them with technical assistance, tools, and resources to help them better support student parents at their institutions. And just, because I think many people don't know just how many parenting college students there are across the country. More than 1 in 5 college students is parenting. So this work is really important because even though they're a significant population, they're often invisible on college campuses, and we aren't talking about them enough, and what they bring to our campuses, how they enrich our campuses, and the needs that they might have. You may have seen our student parent survey results. We did a national survey of student parents in the spring with recommendations earlier this year that really helps people understand what student parents are experiencing as they move through higher ed. And just a few weeks ago or last month, we released a toolkit for higher ed that really helps them with some easy practical tips for how to best support student parents this academic year. So we're really proud of both of those research pieces and proud that they're available to the field. This really represents early steps in this new national work, and we're incredibly proud of it. We also just hired our first Director of Learning and Advocacy, Portia Polk, who will be leading this work and building out a policy and advocacy agenda as well. That agenda is going to be driven by our scholars and student parents across the country to address the local, state, and national policies that either support or hinder student parent success. Of course, we'll continue to work hard to elevate our scholars' voices and spread the word about our mission through different media channels. We've been incredibly fortunate to be able to do that. Last week, we were just in the Washington Post Metro section talking about the needs of student parents right now who are in college. You may have also seen other recent coverage in Inside Higher Ed, NBC Think, the Washington Business Journal, and more. So we're really committed to amplifying the needs of this population. And lastly, this summer, we embarked upon a new strategic planning process, which is going to chart our growth for the next 3 years. It's hard to wrap my mind around the fact that it'll take us up through 2024 when we're all just trying to get through 2020. But it is going to really help us think about what we want to look like and be doing over the next 3 years through 2024. We look forward to mapping out a plan for that growth, which will include scaling our direct services to support more teen parents and their children. So again, lots to be proud of and lots to look forward to, and we're so glad to have you all as partners, supporters, and cheerleaders in all of it. And Karen, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Thanks, Nicole. Wow, so much exciting stuff going on, as you can tell. And because she didn't mention it, because Nicole is not one to self-promote, which we're working on, I want to just mention that Nicole has a book coming out in May. It's called Pregnant Girl, and it will tell her story and the story of Generation Hope. And we're really excited about that and think it's going to be, well, it's going to be an amazing book, but I think it's also going to be an amazing time to get this story out, a way to get it out. So we want you to keep an eye out for that. And if you're interested in staying informed about the book, we're dropping a form in the chat that allows you to sign up to make sure we're keeping you in the loop on all of that. So now we're going to open it up to questions. And I know Catherine's team is going to be reading those questions from the chat for us. So please drop any questions you have in the chat now. But I'll get us started and just ask Nicole, can you talk a little bit about the best ways for people to get involved or support Generation Hope right now?
Yeah, thank you, Karen, for always being my publicist and for starting us off with a great question. There are so many ways to get involved, and one of the things that we've really tried to do at Generation Hope is there's certainly a way for anyone to become involved, in the way that works best for your time and your capacity. And we're also open to connecting with folks who want to learn more and who want to talk about specific talents or things that they might bring to the table. But we do have a few really tangible options right now. One, we're looking for a few more resource families that Naya talked about in our Next Generation Academy, especially in Virginia for our scholars and our kiddos in that program. Again, resource families are a group mentoring opportunity. You can do it with your nuclear family, your book club, coworkers, any group. And kids are also invited to participate as well. So this has been really a great volunteer opportunity for families to do together. They build relationships with a scholar and their child and help connect them to resources and expand their social capital. The second is twice a year, our scholars create wish lists of tangible items like gas and grocery gift cards, school supplies, diapers, and the members in our community can purchase those items for our scholars, and we distribute them later in the month to them. So we've been doing our fall wish list for the past couple of weeks. Today is actually the last day to purchase items, but we're going to share a link to that if that's something that you're interested in. The third is that we're navigating a really uncertain time, as we all know, and some of our normal fundraising opportunities, some of you may have been past guests at our gala, which is such a special event. We had to cancel our gala that typically would have happened in June, and we'll likely have to cancel again this year due to COVID. So, you know, financial support in any amount can really make a difference. So we encourage you to think about that if that's a way that you'd like to get involved. And then finally, a super easy but really impactful way to help us is telling a friend about Generation Hope or introducing us to someone new. We are still not a household name here in the DC area, and certainly are trying to grow awareness about our work across the country. So just letting people know who we are, making an introduction for us and widening our network is really important. And yeah, I'll end there, and I'm going to see if Catherine has any Q&A or questions that have been dropped into the chat.
Great. Yes, we do have a couple questions, and we also had one or two sent ahead of time. So I'll kick it off with one that we got emailed before the event. And this is probably good for Nicole to kick off to answer. In your experience and with the research you have done, what do you feel is the greatest barrier in getting higher ed institutions to realize the great need in supporting student parents? And there's a second question that connects there. Are there any plans to work with higher ed campuses to create a position to work with this population of students?
Yeah, I think the biggest hurdle for many institutions is, again, goes back to the invisibility of parenting college students. I mean, historically in higher ed, people, you know, are looking at the very traditional definition of a college student, you know, straight out of high school, 17, 18 years old, no parenting responsibilities, not a first generation college student, not a someone who's working full or part-time while going to school. And that is just not the reality. The majority of college students today don't fit that mold. And so I think so much of higher ed has been catered to that, you know, traditional definition of a college student. And so it's really hard to get the field to start to understand that there is this significant population of students who are parenting, who have a very different experience in college. And I think that's the first step. Part of that invisibility is that most colleges and universities don't track the parenting status of their students. So that means at any given time on their campus, they could have a good number of students who have children or dependents that they're caring for, but they are not collecting data. And what we know, what doesn't get measured doesn't get prioritized and invested in. So I think that's a step. We have to get more colleges and universities to really be tracking the parenting status of their students so they have a real full picture of who on their campus or how many students on their campus have this experience. And so I think those are the first steps. I do think that we're seeing, particularly in the pandemic, that institutions are having to recognize that there are more non-traditional or real college students that have really suffered in this pandemic. We mentioned the decline in enrollment rates that are happening, and that is something that colleges and universities are having to really pay attention to, and how do they retain those students. So I do think that there is an interest and hope, and there are opportunities for sure. The second question, plans to work with campuses to create a position. I'm assuming that means like a staff person who would work with this population. We really feel that's an important part of campuses really becoming better supports, providing better supports to parenting students. So our toolkit actually has as one of our recommendations, as well as our student parent report, that we really recommend that institutions have a champion on campus for parenting college students. And we leave it up to the campuses to really define what that looks like. But a dedicated person is really important. And it really makes a difference for, if you're a teen parent in college, to know that there's XYZ person on the campus that you can go to at any time and talk about what you're going through, what needs you might have, and not feel like there's not someone who really is there to champion for you.
Great, thanks, Nicole. We also have a few alums on the call, and one of our alums, Joseph, just asked, how can alumni of Generation Hope be most helpful?
Yeah, first of all, Joseph, I'm so happy you're here. I wish we could give you a hug in person, but it's a virtual hug. I would say having alums actively engaged in our alumni executive council. We have a group that brings together some of our alums to help with various things, like helping us interview our people who want to join our staff and start working directly with students. It's really important that we have alums in our interview process for those who are going to be working directly with students, so they can help us assess whether someone is really ready or has the skills and experience to do this work. We value our alums in terms of their expertise in that sense. Also providing support and inspiration and motivation to our current students. I think there's no better voice for "you can do this, you can get through it" than our alumni. And having you guys come back and talk to our students about some of the challenges that you might have had, and really being able to encourage them to stay the course. And then also, I would say the work that we're doing, this policy and advocacy agenda and the national work that we're doing, great ways to continue to stay involved. We may call on you to come with us and speak at a Capitol Hill briefing, or help to raise awareness about a particular piece of legislation that we want to really focus on and amplify. So I think there are a ton of ways, and your voice really matters. And so that's one big way, I would say.
Thanks. Another question from Beth. Good morning. I have seen firsthand the amazing work of Generation Hope, and thank you. My question is, have any issues come up with scholars in terms of immigration? Maybe not with them, but with family members, which could impact them. Also, I know there were changes regarding eligibility and immigration status. Is there more discussion on this? Thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to see from a technical standpoint if our director of programming is able to take that, because she has worked really closely with scholars facing immigration issues. If not, Caroline, I can take it.
I can. I'm not really supposed to be talking today, but I will. I'm a spotlight myself. Yeah. So hi, Beth. Nice to hear from you. So yes. So we have definitely seen immigration challenges come up. Certainly with the pandemic has slowed down some people's immigration processes. And there's travel. We have a student who's trying to get her green card and she has to go back to El Salvador, but of course there's travel restrictions. And so we've been, as always, we recognize we're not immigration experts. We want to stay in our lane, but just making sure that they're connected with the best resources. We've also utilized our emergency fund to help pay things like DACA renewal fees, things like that. As far as opening up, so right now we are open to any student who has a status that allows them to work and get in-state tuition. So that would be DACA, U visas, things like that. We are in active conversations about what it could look like to just open up fully. We are currently just trying to research sort of what additional supports we would need to provide, because we want to make sure that we're prepared to really serve that population well. And I may actually, Beth, I know you have tons of experience working with this population, so I may ask for your insight. But that's definitely something that we feel is important, that we recognize there's a lot of intersectionality between these populations. And also we recognize that immigration status is fluid. So we want to, support as wide of a range of young parents as we can. So that is definitely a conversation that we're actively having at our leadership level, and hoping to be able to sort of make some decisions about that, moving forward.
Great. Thanks, Caroline. I do want to note there were a couple questions about tutoring, especially around math tutoring. And so I know someone dropped in the tutoring link into the chat for anyone who's interested in that. It is definitely a need for us and for our scholars now and in general. So if anyone has questions about that, you can just follow the link in the chat. Great. We have a question from Monica Brown. Good morning, Nicole. You mentioned that over 90% of GH scholars completed their studies in the spring. Do we know the status of the others? As an educator, I'm interested in knowing what I can do to support them on our college campuses.
Yeah, that actually probably would be another Caroline question, because she was more kind of working closely with those students, and Naya, I know you were as well. So I would defer to you all in terms of the others that didn't.
Yeah, so we definitely had a few students who just had sort of very challenging things come up as a result of COVID. Either we've have had, unfortunately, a number of students be diagnosed themselves or have had family members diagnosed that resulted in them, dropping their classes or not finishing. We had a couple of students who had serious medical complications unrelated to COVID. So we had some high risk pregnancy, that kind of thing. Yes, so with those students, we really worked with them first to see if there was ways for them to take incompletes, because a lot of the colleges were a lot more generous than, as you know, I'm sure, Monica, typically they might be as far as offering incomplete. So we've been trying to see if there are opportunities for them to complete those classes. And then really just working with them over the summer to make sure that they were ready to get back in class in the fall, that they had the infrastructure in place, they had the laptop, they had the Wi-Fi, they had all of that stuff. Thinking about what was realistic. So is it realistic for you to take 12 credits? Should we think about just maybe a 6-credit semester while this is going on? So we've really tried to just help, I think our case management, we've tried to be really intentional. We also waived probationary status for our students this past semester. We typically have requirements about certain GPA, certain number of credits, and we just felt it wasn't fair to penalize students based on that, given the extraordinary circumstances. So we definitely just sort of left everyone on their status and didn't put anyone on probation or anything like that. And I think our scholars appreciated just that we were acknowledging that this was crazy times, and it was unreasonable to expect that these things wouldn't happen, but we were pleasantly surprised with how well, I should never be surprised by any of the amazing things our scholars do anymore because they constantly amaze me, but we were really, really proud, as Nicole said, of how well the majority of them did it. And even those that did drop their classes or didn't finish, I think almost every single one of them is enrolled in classes this semester and ready to succeed. So.
Great, thanks, Caroline. We also had Teresa, who brought up an idea about opportunities to not only purchase necessities for families, but also perhaps be helpful in a way, helping them pay a bill that would otherwise hold them back because of late fees or something like that. Nicole, maybe this would be an opportunity to talk a bit about our emergency fund and the ways that supports our scholars in times like that.
Yeah, it's a great question. And also I think it relates to, hopefully I'm saying this wrong, Christina or Christiana. I see her question here about the rent crisis and how that's impacted families, and is Generation Hope helping there? So yes, Generation Hope has had an emergency fund since our inception, so since over the past 10 years, and that emergency fund helps scholars through any type of crisis situation that comes up, whether it is I can't, afford heat this winter, or my childcare vouchers have been interrupted for some reason and I need help paying childcare. We've helped scholars transition out of domestic violence situations with that emergency fund, food insecurity, so all types of needs. And our students can request up to $1,000 a year from that fund so that we can assist in those crisis situations. And so that has been a game changer for our families on an ongoing basis. And that has been in existence, as I said, since 2010. With the pandemic, we, on top of that emergency funding, we have also given out grants. We did a round of emergency grants to our scholars in April, totaling about $20,000. They could use that for anything. So as you mentioned, it could be used for a late bill, or it could cover something else so that they could put their resources towards a late bill. It could go towards making sure they can pay their rent, things like that. We're going to be doing another round of those grants in a couple of weeks for our scholars, recognizing that this pandemic and its impacts have just continued. And then, as I said, they are also able to still request emergency funding. So they can still request up to $1,000 from our regular emergency fund in addition to the grants that we've been dispersing. And our Hope coaches, Caroline and her team, are amazing at staying on top of what's going on with our scholars and really hearing from them. If there's a crisis that does come up, we try to get ahead of it as much as we can. So that we're making sure that we're, keeping them in their homes, that we're helping them with their bills, things like that.
Great, thanks, Nicole. And I know we originally had this ending at 10:45. I think we have one more question in the chat, and we're happy to stay on for a few more minutes to answer the rest of the questions. We have a question from Dana. I'd love to hear more about your alumni council and other ways you engage with scholars to determine programming, advocacy topics, etc.
Yeah, I can speak to that, and then Caroline can dig a little bit deeper. But one big thing that I'll say is that, we really believe in centering our work in the voices of our students and really having them help us shape and enhance our programming. So the career readiness program that we mentioned earlier, and even Next Generation Academy, those additions to our programming really came from hearing our students loud and clear, engaging them in our strategic planning process, and asking them what are the ways that we can better serve you and support you, and making investing resources and making commitments to doing that work. And I have to give a shout out to our board, who wholeheartedly also really centers the work that they do on a student voice. And so that's a critical piece of who we are at Generation Hope. So our Alumni Council is an extension of that, and it's been wonderful to engage them more formally in that way. But we also have a Scholar Leadership Council. So for those students who are currently in our program, our Scholar Leadership Council also provides a ton of guidance and feedback and insights. We even share our metrics with them on a regular basis and ask them for those areas where we might be falling short. What do we need to be doing differently? What do you see here that we're not seeing? So I would say, just as a value for us, and really core and central to who we are, is centering our work in our students' voices. And the advocacy agenda that Portia is going to be working on is also going to be that. I've gotten a lot of questions about, well, what pieces of legislation are you going to be focused on? And I have been really hesitant to answer that question, because it's really important to us that our students tell us, our students determine what those pieces of legislation should be. So I'll say that, and then I can turn it over to Caroline to share a little bit more about the Alumni Council.
Yes, thank you. So yeah, our Alumni Council is a group of amazing alumni, including the wonderful and talented Joseph, who is on this call today. So they, as Nicole mentioned, they help to inform our metrics. They participate. We feel strongly that all frontline staff should be interviewed by an alumni, so they participate in our interview process. And we also just inaugurated officially, or voted on, or confirmed, I don't know if the term is, our first ever alumni board member. Her name is Carla. She's wonderful, and she is going to be a full voting member of our board. And we're really excited about that. We've been talking about doing that for a few years, but we had an alumni virtual happy hour the other night, and I said to everyone, well, now, just so you guys know, Carla is basically my boss now. And which I think is incredibly important, because she should, our scholars should be our bosses and should be in really making these decisions. So we also continue to open up our career readiness programming to our alumni. We recently had a wonderful story where one of our alumni participated in career coaching, and then we were able to make a connection for her to another nonprofit organization where we knew folks, and she just got a full-time job through that connection directly, which was wonderful. So we really want to continue to support our alumni, and then we engage our alumni to support our scholars too. So we have a couple of alumni who are participating as panelists in our upcoming career week. We have an alumni who works for the FBI who just recently emailed me and was like, hey, we have internships, like, let me know if you have any scholars who are interested. I'll tell them, give them tips on your application. So we see our alumni as a huge resource, and we have a few alumni on staff as well. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that. 2 of our alumni are on our staff, and several of our alumni have been mentors as well. So we just see that continuing to grow. But we see our alumni as one of our greatest assets for sure.
Great, thanks, Caroline. I saw a question about making a contribution to the emergency fund, so I will drop that in the chat. Are there any other questions before I kick it over to Karen to wrap us up? Great. Karen? Just getting her off mute. There we go.
Great. Thanks. Thank you, Catherine and Nicole and Caroline and everyone who answered those questions. And thank you all for joining us again today. We really appreciate it. Again, this is our Generation Hope family Zoom, as I like to call it, coffee hour. One just last thing, Nicole mentioned that one of the best things you can do for us is mentioning us to a friend. And that's definitely true. And one easy way to help with that is to just follow us on social media and keep tabs on what's going on with us and help amplify our messages and our activities on social media, Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. And I think Catherine's going to drop those links also into the chat for those of you who want to keep track of us on social media. And that will be a way where you can find out about like wish list when it happens again around the holidays, and Giving Tuesday when that happens right after Thanksgiving. So great ways for you to be involved in just telling your friends about Generation Hope and encouraging them to be giving to us. So with that, I just want to thank you all again for joining us today, and we hope to see you again soon in one way or another. So thanks again.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.